I've been thinking a lot recently about superhero games, largely because I'm threatening to do a design dive episode over on AI in games on their untapped potential. Now, while I'm still planning on doing that, I've found myself playing some of the more recent releases as a co-op experience with my brother. But what's really nagging at me is a lack of impact or engagement within the games in question. While I'm meant to be a superhero, I don't really feel all that super, and I suspect much of it is down to the perils of scale, as well as the manner in which characters and gameplay are designed to ensure it is manageable for the developer. So here it is, folks, the Smoke and Mirrors episode that's actually the first of a two-parter, in which I compare and contrast how AI responsiveness and their overall behaviour and design impacts how super heroic you feel, first in 2019's Marvel's Ultimate Alliance 3 by Team Ninja, and in the next episode we'll be looking at Marvel's The Avengers released in 2020 by Crystal Dynamics. So let's get started by visiting Ultimate Alliance 3. It's a hack and slasher influenced by the likes of Diablo. In a top-down fashion, players can control up to 4 characters from the Marvel Universe. Given this isn't tied to any particular team, or the movies, you can have a cast of characters ranging from Iron Man and Captain America, to Crystal of the Inhumans, Ghost Rider, Doctor Strange, all the Spider People, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and a handful of X-Men. And of course the Guardians of the Galaxy, because everyone knows who they are nowadays. Seriously, as a long-time comic fan, that still kinda blows my mind a little bit. From a development perspective, it's interesting given that the Ultimate Alliance series has never been developed by the same team twice. The 2006 original is by Raven Software, who had previously developed the excellent X-Men Legends games, but have since supported the primary dev team on every Call of Duty since the original Black Ops. Meanwhile, the 2009 sequel is developed by Vicarious Visions, who had worked on the ports of the original game to the PSP and the Wii. So with Team Ninja taking the reins for this third entry on the Nintendo Switch, it's a franchise whose core tenets are established, but it's never had that consistent development team behind it to help it mature. And that's funny for me, given my main gripe with the game is that it felt better to play back in the X-Men Legends games. Let me stress that I've enjoyed playing through it, but the part that bugs me is the lack of responsiveness by the non-player characters to being attacked by you and your collection of superhumans. As you might expect, there are a lot of very powerful and very dangerous enemy archetypes that appear in the game. They change from one locale to another, and can prove quite lethal when you're not careful. In fact, Ultimate Alliance 3 is a lot harder than earlier games in the series, and you really need to play through the whole game on the easiest difficulty and level up your squad before attempting to play it again on the higher levels. But the big issue is that, for the most part, the enemies don't really react to being smashed about. This isn't to say you can't affect enemies at all, they can be stunned temporarily, and the later enemies can be knocked back, but the larger enemies, essentially the heavy archetypes within the game, suffer an issue that they're hardly ever phased by player attacks, given their stun bars are incredibly large. Meanwhile, the damage they deal to you is pretty substantial, not to mention the cooldown on their attacks is often quite short. Now, I'm currently playing the game on Superior difficulty, which is the 3rd difficulty tier, and I frequently find myself in situations where heavies can overwhelm me and eliminate characters pretty quickly. But this isn't unique to this difficulty, it can happen on the easiest levels as well, because the game doesn't offer much in terms of invulnerability frames, or buffers or resilience to being staggered or knocked down based on the character you're dealing with. Or if it does, I'm certainly not seeing it. So while you might feel powerful one minute as you start smashing your way through mindless ones, Ultron bots or Outriders, you can find yourself getting beat up by a heavy raft guard while you're playing as the Incredible Hulk. The game deliberately circumvents a lot of this particular problem when you play it the first time, given that your roster starts with less powerful characters, first with the Guardians of the Galaxy, followed by Spider-Man, Ms. Marvel and Daredevil. However, over time you accumulate the likes of Iron Man, the Hulk, Captain Marvel and Doctor Strange. These characters are powerhouses in certain ways, and when you replay the game on higher difficulties, it's this odd disparity, where the Hulk is getting the shit kicked out of him by a goon in a jumpsuit. The game doesn't consider the types of characters they are, and instead focuses purely on character levels and stat types. Now of course you can counteract a lot of this with super attacks, and when they work it's all quite satisfying, especially when you're playing with friends, but there's a weird juxtaposition that arises courtesy of the intellectual property it uses. When your team is comprised of superhumans that can be held off by regular goons, it's all a little jarring. Not to mention the bosses who go for a large period of each fight largely ignorant of any damage you deal to them. I appreciate that this is a contrivance of the genre that makes development of the game and balancing of the experience much easier, but at the end of the day it really pulls me out of the game because you could just be playing as any other set of generic characters. For myself, as a long-time comic fan, I can live with that, given I'm used to watching comic properties be utilised in games while not really reflecting how those characters actually work. But in a day and age with the Marvel Cinematic Universe showcasing the power levels and capabilities of these characters, it becomes all the more apparent. Captain Marvel can punch through a starship, and the Hulk can smash Surtur in the face, but 2 inmates in the raft that they hit with super attacks have some health chipped off and nothing more. It's an issue that's a combination of enemy balancing with the overall narrative and design of the game, but then at the same time I appreciate that I am very much overanalyzing things. As I've said, I've enjoyed Ultimate Alliance 3 in a kind of mindless hack and slash sense, but it speaks to the issue of making a compelling game based on a superhero property by understanding how different characters should fit. As a game that aims for a one-size-fits-all approach, it doesn't really work out. And as I said, this is the first of a two-parter of sorts, given in the next video I'm going to take a look at the other big Marvel multiplayer game, which is the Crystal Dynamics Avengers. It's a game that suffers from exactly the same issue, but it has its own set of problems. But yeah, thanks for listening to this episode of Smoke and Mirrors. I'll be back soon with the video on Avengers. Let me know if you've played the Ultimate Alliance games and what you think of them. Am I overthinking this? Is the game really abysmal, or is it actually amazing and I just really need to be told off? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you soon.